You are unique, which is why if you're comparing yourself to other people in a negative way, it will never feel good, ever. Because there will always be things that will be different as for the next person. Because everyone is different. Everyone is unique. This is a back and forth psychological war game within yourself that you'll never win. And actually, I take parts of that back, okay? You can only win the comparison game by, and pardon my language, but by shutting it the fuck down. Hi, welcome to another episode of the You Are Limitless podcast. I'm your host, Madam Chiko, coming to you from the holistic wellness space as a spiritual transformational life coach. And I thank you for joining me on another episode here on YALL. And if you're just now tuning in, I'm so glad to have you with me on my journey, on the show, and you're always welcomed and loved unconditionally here. This is my way of bringing psychology, metaphysical concept, universal law, as well as my own story of extreme limitations due to abuse, drug abuse, and being a justice-impacted individual into the light so that we can learn to let go of what doesn't serve us and start to incorporate more of what is part of our truth, okay? So I am always excited about getting into our vortex, raising our vibration, and discovering more of who we truly are by letting go of those limiting, yucky, negative beliefs that keep us from our truth. And one limiting belief we gotta find a way to let go of is this idea of comparison, which this is a toughie because this is actually in our human nature to compare as a way to see our place within our society, our social circles, our family, our career, our businesses, etc. We compare ourselves to others on social media, how we look, what they're doing, the exotic backdrops to the places that they're at, the kids they have. Comparing in a positive way helps us see what is possible, okay? But most of the time, there's a yuckiness to our comparing, which can be negative, and then it can spawn feelings of jealousy, feelings of depression, unworthiness, distorted perceptions of the self. And these are all symptomatic of one umbrella that I'm going to be talking about today, which is this idea of I can't have what they have. I am unworthy. Now, this may be extreme, and the degree to which someone or you or me may buy into how unworthy we are may differ, but that's what really comparison is I can't have that, which is just a fallacy. But it's this belief in this lack of abundance or that abundance is not equally distributed that keeps us limited. And many of society actually lives in this scarcity mentality, in this lack. So when you do see things that other people have, it's triggering. And yes, this is not to say that unequal distribution of resources, wealth, racism, homophobia, discrimination in general doesn't exist. I know all about discrimination from my own experience as being a Black woman and also a justice impacted individual. So it's like having extra no rights. And I mean, it's in a joking way, but also there's some truth to how much limitation that there can be out there, right? Our human systems, at least in North America, have been set up in ways that have created disadvantages for many groups of indigenous peoples and peoples within the justice system, or people who are different from your, quote, status quo, from the norms. But this is why we bring this information to light. This is why this is my calling, because of the life that I've lived, the extreme limitations and having overcome them and now showing people how I did it as a coach, as a law school student, so that they don't have to keep on the same patterns that block the abundance that is already ours for the grab, ours for the taking. But when we're in comparison mode, how can we see that abundance to begin with? Negativity doesn't allow us to see how abundant we are. I think it's so important to be able to talk about this despite how triggering it can be. So first, let's show ourselves some love and compassion because we all get trapped in this or have been in the past. And the more awareness you bring to it, the more we can let go of it and transmute it, which transmute means to change, to transition into positivity so that we are comparing in negative ways less. or so that when we do start comparing ourselves in negative ways, we can catch ourselves. So how can we transmute comparing into something that's positive? Well, we can learn to actually define how we use comparison by changing how we view it, changing how we view ourselves as the unique, beautiful beings of creation, and understanding that each person has something unique to offer. Each person can attract all things of their highest good. And this is how we're going to shut it the fuck down. So if we're not comparing, then how do we gauge what is true for us in what it is we are wanting in our lives? How do we not succumb to the negative effects of comparison? This is where the juicy rewiring of our brain and ways of being comes into play, because instead of comparison, I got something else for you. Recognition. Recognizing things that you want in the form of seeing others who already have it tells you that if you can see it, you can have it too. By the way, this is a really powerful visualization tool for manifestation. By realizing that you already have it and being able to perceive it, being able to see it, tells you that you can obtain it when you raise your vibration higher. But it's not even about the stuff, because sometimes we can actually let go of some of the stuff when we realize that it's our egos that want that. So we can actually tell the ego to hush a little, and that can help with comparing just a little bit less when we realize it's our ego that wants something. But when you recognize your uniqueness as a facet of creation and you see others' uniqueness as a facet of creation on their own path, you begin to neutralize the negative comparison game. You shut it down. And it feels different, comparison and recognition. And we'll talk about it, okay? We'll talk about how it feels to funnel our perspective through the lens of comparison and how it feels when we funnel our perspective through the lens of recognition, because there is a difference. And with practice and consistency, you will feel the difference. So let's talk about the difference between the two. And remember the self-love. Remember the no judgment, because judgment never freaking helps. Comparison. Comparison implies you can't have X, Y, Z. And then we will tell ourselves stories about why we can't have XYZ, which only confirms more of that XYZ that we can't have. And then we'll justify why someone else can have XYZ. Maybe they're more privileged. Maybe they have more resources. Maybe they come from a background that's less traumatic. Like, we will find ways to justify, and then you'll feel the energy of comparison and further keep us stuck in that mentality of I can't have. Energy of comparison is the energy of competition, right? If we feel like we lack, then what are we going to do? We got to grab, we got to make sure that the next person doesn't get X, Y, Z. And this could be through anything. This could be in the hunt for a relationship. This could be in our workplace environment, in our creative endeavors. So the idea of competition, survival of the fittest, that's the kind of mentality that can actually spawn some of the ideas of lack and scarcity, that there isn't enough to go around, or the market is saturated. Look at that person doing it, so that means I can't do it too. And again, because we feel like there isn't enough to go around, that spawns those feelings of jealousy. That spawns those feelings of disempowerment. That spawns those feelings of limited in all the negative ways, okay? And for example, with the market is saturated, and I want to make this a point. There's no such thing as a market being too saturated when you're in an abundant mindset. Because when you are abundant in your mindset, in your actions, in your being, which is our natural state, you will know that anything that you have to offer, there is someone waiting somewhere ready to receive what it is that you have to offer, okay? In the search for a relationship. If you have love to give, but first we got to make sure that we are in love with ourselves. We have to make sure we are in love with our own energy. And of course, we can always find someone who can help us get us there. So that doesn't discredit the fact that maybe you're not fully there and you do find someone. So by all means, like, express this idea, tailor it, mold it to fit your needs, or if it doesn't resonate, let it go. But point is, if we have love to give, then there's someone waiting to receive it. If we have a talent, if we have some type of self-expression that we want to share, there's someone waiting to see it. There's never, ever such thing as a saturated market, because there's always an audience. That's how abundance works. So just because someone is doing something, that doesn't necessarily mean that you can't do it too. And actually, being able to see it through the lens of recognition would tell you that, holy shit, if they could do it, Why can't I do that? That's how you start to reprogram, okay? But when you feel like you can't do it, that spawns and reinforces the self-perpetuating mechanism of unworthiness. I must not be worthy because I don't have XYZ. It just feels yucky because you feel like only if you are worthy, you would be able to attract what it is that you are wanting to attract. And these beliefs actually keep us stuck where we're at, okay? It's not even so much that the outside world is limiting us, but that we are matching the limitations, the energy of limitation. So let me give you an example from my story. And this is a really powerful example because there was a moment in time a few years ago whenever I got clean and I started my healing journey, started going to therapy and going to retreats and traveling and doing things for my spiritual and personal development. Started working out too because I had felt like I had damaged my body so much. I was like, I just have to work out. Like, the drugs took its toll. I have to bring myself back to health so I can experience longevity, so I can experience life that I hadn't experienced before, which now life is just so positive. And I promise you, with time, with practice, you will get to that point where you are back to your baseline of love. You're back to your baseline of positivity most of the time, if not all the time, but most of the time, because we can't experience bad days, even on a healing journey. So this is why kindness, compassion is so important. We have to practice these things, especially whenever we've been told otherwise for so long that we are not worthy in some way, shape, or form. We've been told this. And it's been reflected to us. So just based on my own story with this idea of like confirming the biases or feeling like I'm unworthy and then seeing it play out. So I truly believed that I was nothing more than a drug addict, and that because I was a drug addict and I had gone to jail, that I would not be able to do anything else because that was who I was, okay? So whenever I saw other people, even other people who had gone to prison, which I had never been to prison, but even when I saw other people who had been to prison and then they came out and they were thriving, it didn't make sense to me. I was like, what is going on here? And I knew it was me. It had to be me. It had to be my perspective, because here are these people who, by society standards, were fuck-ups. And I say this with air quotes because no, they're not. We can make mistakes, we can learn. And I'm not saying that there are certain that mistakes don't mean that we don't hold people accountable for their actions. And I think it's really important to hold people accountable for their actions, even if it means through the form of a criminal charge, right? Because that is just the idea of karmic effects. What you put out is what you get back. It's very simple. So I'm seeing these people who are just thriving in their own right, like even with convictions, able to get a house, able to get work. And at the time, I felt so disempowered because I'm like, all I am is this arrest record, okay? Like not even a felon, but all I am is this. All I am is this drug addict. And because of that, I got those confirmations through getting denied at jobs. Maybe I wasn't fully honest, okay? Because I felt like I couldn't be honest. And so I felt unworthy. And whenever I would see these other people who were in my similar situation and they managed to not match the energy of the repercussions that come with being a justice impacted individual, I was jealous. I was like, how? And then I made up all kinds of stories about why they were able to achieve and I wasn't. Oh, maybe they had a bunch of drug money stashed up and blah, blah, blah. So that's how they were able to do this and that. Like just ridiculous stuff whenever we get trapped in this idea of not being good enough. And that's that other layer, that other energy of comparison. Is that jealousy? Is that gossip? You'll talk that shit about the people who are doing their thing. They're just living their life. And they will just bother you because, again, you don't believe that you are good enough for some reason. Somewhere you picked up the belief that you aren't good enough. So when you see people who you perceive to be good enough, and again, you have that lack mentality, then you create jealousy and gossip. And then you attract more people, more situations of those frequencies that, in my opinion, are lower frequencies into your experience. And if it's the people that you're attracting, these are people who also use comparison energy in a negative way. So misery loves company, right? And it's a self-perpetuating cycle, this comparison game, this confirmation bias. Whenever I was in that mode of, I can't have this, or I'll never be able to go to law school, or I am nothing but a drug addict, guess what? I saw that in my reality, and it stopped me from taking action towards, say, maybe studying a little bit harder, or maybe looking for a job at the time anyways, It was my own beliefs about myself and this idea of like, there's something innately wrong with me that I can't have what they have. And social media, unfortunately, is a rabbit hole for comparison. When we are just mindlessly scrolling, we may not even realize that we're doing it at times until we put our devices away and we're like, damn, I feel weird now. And this may not be a popular opinion, but I think that while social media can be so useful in personal development, in creative endeavors, if used in a positive way, but I think that even when used in a positive way, our brains still need a break from the constant stimuli and dopamine hits, which is why we can feel depleted. So I will go ahead and say that social media is just depleting overall. So get off autopilot and go put your feet in some dirt or grass. It feels good. You don't even have to do it for long. I'm so serious. Because social media is a breeding ground for negative comparison. When we do see things that other people are doing, things that other people have, we can, again, trigger that self-perpetuating cycle of jealousy, depression, sadness, anxiety, etc., etc. So let's talk about recognition, because recognition feels so much better. The energy of recognition is expansive. It's light. It's creative. You see everyone is on their own path. You see everyone as their unique self, but you also see yourself as your unique self. You validate your experience. And from that point, it neutralizes any negativity that you would have, because you understand that even if you were your ideal self today, it would still look so different from anyone else's. And by the way, you're always your ideal self. We just got to let go of the things that really keep us from our truth. You're always you. You are a high vibrational being. You are created from love. You are loving energy. You are that. But it's our beliefs, it's the conditionings that have really tainted our perception of our true self. When you are in that state of recognition, you're able to validate your experiences, and you're able to see where there's misalignment in order to take actions or inspired actions into the directions that you would prefer, into the things that you want to see happen within your life. And this doesn't have to be huge dramatic actions like starting a whole new diet regime. Sometimes we need to take small actions, since action breeds confidence, right? So when you take small actions, you feel more confident that you can take even bigger actions and bigger actions and bigger actions, and it grows. Also, with recognition, you are rooting for yourself always. You're always rooting for yourself. You're not putting yourself down because you are seeing something in others that you would like, but you feel like you can't have. You root for yourself no matter what, okay? This is something that you do no matter what. You have to root for yourself. How can you root for other people when you're not even rooting for yourself? So when you are in that state of recognizing, holy shit, like this is what I want, you're rooting for yourself and everyone else in what they've been able to attract, because you're able to see what they're attracting. You're able to express gratitude for being able to perceive it. And also that lets you know that why can't you do it? You don't know the hoops that someone had to jump through, by the way, to be able to show you what they are showing you. You don't know the backstory behind pictures, videos, what have you. And so also that helps with this idea that not everyone's perfect, and that you don't know what it took for someone to get to where they're at. You don't know, like, you have to recognize first what it took for yourself to get to where you're at. Okay, so pat yourself on the back constantly. Tell yourself you love yourself. This isn't selfish in a negative way. That's just plain and simple. And being able to see what they are doing, see what you're doing, it means that you're capable of being able to obtain it if this is part of your journey. This is where, with the ego, this is where you start to decipher, oh, my ego wants that type of car. And it doesn't matter if the ego wants that, right? But we're able to let go of some of the things and expectations whenever we realize that some of it is ego. And it's okay to use the ego, right? Sometimes the ego can be a motivating factor in getting us to move. So the idea of throwing away the ego, that's impossible. That's our physical experience. But it's about not letting the ego rule us, because the ego can come with negative side effects. That is called the negative ego. So recognition is seeing the different expressions of creation, of God, of universe in other people. And this is a powerful tool of manifesting, this idea of visualization. And you can use social media as a visualization tool for the things you want to attract, for the things that you know is yours. But you have to know that you're worthy. And the more that you believe in your worthiness, we got to practice this. We got to practice believing in our worthiness. The more that we start to show up and we start to take those actions. Because I know, I think that at least in the spiritual realm and a lot of spiritual communities that I have met and the people, I noticed that there's this knowing of worthiness in a lot of them, and this understanding that we are all divine, all a part of creation. But then there's this lack of action. It's not translating into the action. And so there's still this stuckness that is felt. And this happens in all communities, but this is one of the communities that I work with. And so it's the lack of action, or the taking inspired action, whatever it may be, that kind of keeps us stuck. And then sometimes we fall backwards into, well, maybe I'm not worthy. Maybe I'm not deserving of all things. But I promise you, we got to practice these things, right? We got to practice showing up for ourselves. And sometimes we can use other people in our visualization when we're not comparing, because recognition spawns positivity. It allows expansion. We're able to use our imagination through the conduit of other people who are showing us what is possible. So if you can see it, if you can perceive it, it is possible. And it is yours for the taking with the actions, okay? It's not just going to appear from nothing. You have to move, okay? You have to create the momentum in the actions, in the thought processes, in the new way of being, in order to have the things that are ours become visible to our experience. And when you start to shift your perspective into the idea of recognition over comparison, notice how you feel in your body, in your spirit, in your mind. Notice how less constricted you feel. Notice how you start to validate your own uniqueness. Notice how you are overthinking less, right? Notice how you are much more connected with your imagination, and how you can then use your imagination to be able to come up with ideas for any creative endeavors that you want to do. Maybe you want to start your own business. Maybe you want to enter a new career. Maybe you want to expand your perception of yourself in your spiritual growth. Maybe you just want something better for your family. You will notice how much more connected you are with your imagination, because really, ideas are born in the imagination. We're bringing things from the imagination down to earth. All ideas come from nothing in terms of being able to see it. We physicalize it by taking the actions. And when you recognize through other actions that other people have taken, through seeing the things that they are projecting, that shows you that you can do it too. And it doesn't matter whether it's real or not, because I do understand how sometimes things aren't as they seem, and a lot of people do like to project a certain image of themselves that may not be the true self, that may not be in alignment with their true nature. That happens all the time. A lot of edits. AI technology these days, I'm not anti-AI, but I definitely can see how it can further add on to the illusions of this being factual or real, and it may not be. So, but that's not the point. The point is, it doesn't really matter whether it's real or not. You can still use it as a visualization technique, if nothing else, but to help you feel better. If not to manifest anything else, but to manifest a better state of being where you're more present. That is enough, because that still tells you right then and there that you are enough. It's not even about whether you can manifest this or that. It's just knowing that you are enough and you are a unique expression of creation. And it's about, what do you want to do with that uniqueness, whether people are looking or not. It's really about, what do you want to do with your truth? How do you want to express yourself and show up for yourself? And comparison doesn't allow for this. And this is why I'm so happy to share this perspective on comparison and recognition. Comparison and recognition. We want to let go of comparison. It is a natural instinct of us to be able to compare, to see where we are at within our social structures. But at the same time, some of these social structures kind of need to be torn down, and you are the one to create that new structure within yourself that's more positive, that's more in alignment with your higher purpose. And so let's get rid of those tendencies to compare. And since sometimes it's really hard to just be like, hey, I won't compare, right? Let's not be ignorant. Sometimes it's really hard to override some of these things without a replacement. So let's replace comparison with recognition. Recognition allows for expansion. It takes the sting out of, maybe we can't see that we have this right now. But it also takes away that sense of jealousy. It takes away that feeling of lack. It takes away this idea that you are not abundant. And over time, you will notice as you start to really internalize these beliefs that you can achieve a better state of being. You can achieve what it is that you truly want to achieve or need to achieve. You start to see yourself from the lens of worthiness, which is your true nature. You start to know that you are worthy, and comparison doesn't allow for you to understand your worth. Recognition allows for you to see that if you can perceive it, you can achieve it. And if you can perceive it, you can appreciate it. You can show gratitude for the different expressions of the universe. Thank you guys so much for letting me share this perspective. And I would love to hear from you guys and how you have dealt with that negative voice in your head in terms of comparison. Like, what are some of the ways that you have used to be able to thought stop, right? To tell that voice no. And how do you feel about this idea of recognition? I would love to hear your thoughts, opinions, and yes, you are just so loved unconditionally here. Thank you guys so much for yet another episode on the You Are Limitless podcast. I am so grateful to have the opportunity to get in alignment with you and have you a part of my journey and me a part of your journey. And let's continue on these processes and concepts and ways of being that are more aligned with our true nature. Thank you so much. Once again, you are loved, you are love, and no one, nothing, no event ever could take that from you because you are part of creation. And if you are here, you're here for a reason, and that is to be your amazing self. Thank you so much. My name is Chiko, and I will see you guys next time on another episode of You Are Limitless, y'all. Woo!